Have you ever watched a movie and thought, it's pretty good, at the very least worthy of the time you invested, but then forgot about it soon after? Have you ever returned to one of those films later only to have it blow your mind and change your life? Now, I'd totally understand if it was Weekend at Bernie's, but on this retro review episode, let's discuss Liam Neeson's wolf-fighting musical comedy, The Grey. All terrible jokes aside, 2012's The Grey is a movie that I watched and then moved on with my life, only to watch it years later and to have it hit me like a cocaine-fueled Lawrence Taylor sack after I told him I'd slept with his wife. Now, the words underrated and overlooked get thrown around a lot about certain movies, but I truly believe this film falls into one of those categories.
It's underrated.
Thank you for joining this conversation. I appreciate the support, I really do. If you're digging what this video's putting out, I only ask that you roundhouse kick that like button, play a game of chicken with the notification bell, and share this video with a coworker you like the least. At the very least, it should help ease the tension. Also, if you enjoy this enough and I can earn your subscription, I've heard an angel somewhere out there earns their wings.
You got an angel with you right now.
Anyway, let's look back and discuss a critically underrated and misunderstood gem that was unjustly swept into the dustbin of Liam Neeson's old guy action vengeance film library. Say that 3 times fast. I'm of course talking about 2012's The Grey.
Once more into the fray. Into the last good fight I'll ever know. Live and die on this day. Live and die on this day.
Now, before I go through what the movie's about, I want to mention that this video will be a bit spoilery, but I'll do my best not to give everything away. After all, the movie's been out for 11 years, and if you haven't seen it, first of all, get your shit together. Life gets in the way, I get it. So some of you have tuned in and are curious to have this movie sold to them. I completely empathize with that. So The Grey technically came out in 2011, but was widely released at the end of January 2012. It's co-written, produced, and directed by Joe Carnahan and stars Liam Neeson. The film's based on the short story Ghostwalker by Ian Mackenzie Jeffers, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Carnahan. The film follows a group of oilmen stranded in Alaska after a plane crash. The main character, John Otway, who Liam Neeson plays, is a skilled huntsman who leads the survivors in their fight for survival against a pack of Canadian gray wolves. When we first get to know Otway, he starts by showing the viewer that he's had a bitter separation from his wife in a flashback sequence. And after a few drinks at a local bar, he takes a lonely jaunt with his rifle, proceeds to put it in his mouth to end his misery. With some Hollywood magic, we hear a wolf howl in the distance and it seems to snap him back to reality, and he abandons the attempt to end his life. At the beginning of the movie, it's well established that his job at the site is as a marksman to keep it free from wolves and other wild animals that can wreak havoc. Otway and a small plane load of other workers fly out on leave on board a small airplane that crashes and strands them. They don't know where. Most are killed or die quickly, but 7 are left alive. They hope rescuers find them, but Alaska being the giant place that it is, and their plane being the small plane it is starting to rapidly get covered with snow. If the desolate elements of where they're stranded aren't enough, one of the survivors goes to relieve himself and is viciously mauled by wolves. After the incident, Otway leads the remaining group from the plane wreckage, hoping to increase their chances of being rescued. There are many theories on the movie, but I've heard some about what happened after the plane crash. The survivors are in purgatory, or this is a sequel, prequel for the Taken movies. You gotta love the internet.
You're gonna crash the car into the plane like Liam Neeson in Taken 3?
He did that in Taken 3, huh?
I first watched this film on a laptop on a flight from New York to Italy, and the woman sitting next to me not so subtly pulled out her rosary after she saw the plane crash scene. I needed to learn my audience better, I guess. Now, the marketing for this movie was the death knell for it having success. It was sold as Liam Neeson using his particular set of skills to punch wolves in the face. So when people went to the theater for that escapism, they were faced with a film that's about accepting inevitable death, their own mortality, and what it takes to be a man. In all fairness, this film was released when Liam Neeson was putting out an action hero film every few months, it seemed.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
And upon my initial reaction to the film, I thought it was pretty good, but then I moved on with my life. Recently, I revisited this film after aging and acquiring different perspectives, wisdom, and the like. I was alone for a night with a glass of whiskey, so I turned this on and discovered that beneath the surface lies a poetic, beautiful film that's so misunderstood and underrated that it should be a crime. To this day, The Grey is considered a relatively divisive film. From the hopeless tone set early on to the ending, some may perceive the film as nihilism at its finest. The despair is less than subtle from the first frame of the film. I've discussed this movie with people and I've heard, what was the point? A part of me understood the sentiment upon initial viewing, but watching it again, my perspective has completely changed. and it's now a movie that's stuck with me every day since. What I took away from this recent viewing is that it's actually a movie about hope, faith, and the human spirit. It also goes through the stages of masculinity better than almost any movie I can recall. What would John Ottman's father think of him as a man at the beginning of the movie? And what would he think of him as a man at the end? The film addresses father-son relationships in a way I've never quite seen before, but its impact is undeniable. When the late great Roger Ebert saw The Grey, he was supposed to see another film immediately following it, and he wrote, "After The Grey was over, I watched the second film for 30 minutes and then got up and walked out of the theater. It was the first time I've ever walked out of a film because of the previous film. The way I was feeling in my gut, it just wouldn't have been fair to the next film." Now, some bellyache about the wolves in the movie and their belligerent, unrealistic behavior, but to me that's like criticizing the shark in Jaws. As I've heard Ian McKenzie Jeffers say, the wolves are almost a metaphor for depression. When you think you're free, it attacks, sometimes more viciously and at your most vulnerable. There have also been gripes about the dumb decisions some of the characters make that ultimately lead to their demise. But what I saw were men who wouldn't play the victim and eventually had to accept their fate. I wouldn't be doing this movie justice if I didn't touch on the performances. The performances in this film are outstanding. Most notably Liam Neeson. Gun to my head right now, I might say this is his best performance. He has a monologue where he's yelling at God towards the end of the film, and that scene alone would be enough to get most actors nominated for every award. The cinematography in this movie is gorgeous, and even if you watch this on a hot summer night with the AC out, you're more than likely to feel a chill throughout its runtime. The plane crash scene is also unrelenting and beautifully directed, and by people who are far more educated in aviation than I am, one of the most realistic ever filmed. I also really like that this film is very anti-Hollywood. What I mean by that is just when you think something's going to turn out one way, the opposite happens. For instance, there's a scene where a passenger who's dying after the plane crash, and instead of Neeson's character lying to him and doing the typical thing of telling him everything's going to be all right, he instead informs him that he's going to die and that it's soon going to wash over him. The Grey is a film that does not play around. As is the poem Neeson's character recites, the movie comes across as poetic. It plays as a warrior's poem. Neeson's character begins the movie suicidal, without hope, and ready to end it all. But as the movie progresses, we see him never give up, take lead, and fight for his survival with every ounce of his being. Now, it's very well known that Liam Neeson's wife, Natasha Richardson, very publicly died in a skiing accident a couple of years before this film. And there are moments towards the end of the film that will absolutely rip your insides out after seeing what transpired in his character's past. In a way, it seems like Neeson took this role to grieve and get over the loss of his wife. It seems like it's a very cathartic role for him. Now, without giving too much away, the ending of The Grey is relatively ambiguous, but it's poetic in the sense of watching a man who had essentially given up on life fight, even when all hope is lost. I now view this movie as a beautiful metaphor for life. Even when everything is stacked against you, you fight till the end. Even if you already know it's a fight, you can't win. While this movie isn't on most people's favorite list, there is a depth that delivers a profound meaning that will stick with you long after the credits roll. This really isn't a date night movie or a movie you put on with your significant other. This is a movie that's for that person who's alone with their thoughts. This is a movie for that person who's feeling the weight of life, seeing their mortality in the distance, and struggling with the outcomes of their decisions. While this is a heavy movie, you may find it redeeming and uplifting if you're willing to look deeper. And if you do watch it, most people aren't aware that there is a post-credit scene that's just as ambiguous as the ending. This was before it was the Marvel gimmick of the week. I watch many movies, and many of them don't earn the right to be memorable. But for as long as I live, I will never forget this film. So The Grey, have you seen it? Did you like it? Would you care to revisit it if it put a sour taste in your mouth upon initial viewing? Shoot me a comment below and let me know your thoughts on this film. As always, the opinions in this video are mine and mine alone, but what do I know? I'm but a mere jackass. I'll try to do better next time. Catch you later, friends.
Oh, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.